We have here a mystery amp. It's built by a local builder, and I will name him if I find everything's fine or satisfactory. I just don't want to get into that pissing contest. I've had mixed results working on his amps. I say mystery amp because I have no idea what it's actually going to be in here. It's got 5U4G rectifier tubes, seemingly 2 chokes. This tube is taller than the others. Let's see. It's a 6AJ8, which is a tube with which I am unfamiliar. So for right now, I'm just going to put it back. And the owner sent it in saying it doesn't power up. Had a 3 amp fuse in here, and that fuse is toast. So I'm going to flip this over, take a look inside, and see why that fuse blew. All right, I'm not going to mention this guy's name because it's really not going to be a risk to very many people out there buying one of these. This is a Memphis phenomena, and I'll just quietly let some people know. Let's start with the fact that he's got a cap from the neutral to ground, old polarity switch cap like you'd find in a Fender. It's not necessary with a grounded power cable. It's got some electrical tape there on the lamp. They didn't have any big 20 microfarad caps that day, so I used these. A little tough to sort out what's going on in places because like the output tube sockets aren't on the same orientation. It's got some honking big resistors from cathode to ground. I've not measured them yet to see if that's just like a 1 ohm for measuring bias or whether he's doing a partial cathode bias thing there. I'm sure someone's screaming at me that that's clearly a 1 ohm resistor or something. I'm red green colorblind, and I just pretty much ignore color bands on resistors because I cannot trust what my eyes say. I've got to measure them. And from a certain perspective, in the end, that's better. It has, in fact, 2 chokes. Has a whole bunch of stuff here done to a level of quality that I personally do not subscribe to. Let's just say that. Things I would not do, things I would not find acceptable. All that said, while some fugly things happening here, I'm not seeing anything in here which would directly lead me to assume that there is a fault causing a blown fuse, though I will verify these diode strings from plate to ground on the output tubes and verify a few resistance measurements. Then I will power it up with a new fuse on my current limiter and see if something is wanting to blow a new fuse or whether this is one of those things where the old fuse just gave up the ghost. If it is wanting to blow fuses, if these resistors here are good, my money is on either a bad rectifier tube or a bad power tube. We shall soon see. Okay, I've got my light bulb current limiter in place, and I have the shop light off so that we're more likely to see any flashes or anything funky happening either in the rectifier tubes or the power tubes. Let's power this on with the amp in standby, see what happens. Got a fairly healthy glow from the light bulb limiter with just the heaters and the rectifier tubes coming up. Give them a wiggle just in case anything wants to do a light show. Trying to see if both the rectifiers are fully lighting, or heating rather. can't see on that one without turning it upside down, but so far so good. Let's try taking it out of standby. All right, no huge glow. It's possible that the fuse just failed. Fuses, like tubes, are to some degree just glorified light bulbs. And so a tube can fail, a fuse can fail without anything actually being wrong in the amp, but it's always best to be sure. Okay, I'm gonna plug a guitar in and see what it sounds like. I'm gonna leave that light bulb on for the current limiter on for a bit. And if you want to know what a light bulb limiter is, it is out there. Google it. It's an easy thing to build. Does a good job. The premise being that it takes X amount of current for a light bulb to really illuminate, depending on the wattage of the bulb. I think I got a 300 watt in there. And so with the normal current that an amp draws, the bulb should barely glow. And if you have excess current, the bulb will light up bright. But because the bulb is drawing the current, not the amp, it's drawing the current through the bulb. The amp doesn't actually get all the current it would normally have, so you don't end up with a real short and blowing fuses. Now that said, having a hard time untangling a cable here, sorry. That said, the filament on this bulb is glowing an awful lot, the way I would expect to see from, say, an SVT. I may have to do some actual current measurements. It's possible that the 3 amp fuse in this amp is just underrated for the current actually being drawn, and I'll have to take some measurements and see it. It may be that this amp needs a 4 amp fuse. It's got 2 6L6s and 2 5U4Gs. All right, I've got all the knobs at noon except for the master. Let's bring the master up. Well, the master is at 0, and that's the sound I'm getting. That's an awful lot of bleed to get with a master 0 there. Let's go back to that. I've got the channel volumes or gain controls at noon. That's not as it should be. From the looks of things, it's just a cross-line master. So it should be 0 there. Anywho. That was with the drive, channel, and gauge. Oh, so it's kind of a worst case thing. Let's turn the master up all the way. Got some microphonics. We'll sort that out. It's a very noisy amp. That tube there, which I believe is the phase inverter, it is the one that I wasn't sure of the type, the EF whatever. EH, that was what it was. That's very microphonic. Can't tell if it's the output tubes or the phase inverter that's microphonic. Easy way to find out. Let's pull the phase inverter tube and see if we still have noise if I tap on the output tubes. This may show us a problem if there's a problem. All right, so the amp needs new power tubes. And I would not be surprised if that contributed to the blown fuse. It's possible that one of these power tubes is just on its last legs. I'll put the phase inverter back. Probably could deal with a new phase inverter tube if I can find that tube type anywhere. Well, I can't get that in there one-handed. Let's put the guitar down for a minute. All right. It's a very noisy amp. Normally, my goal with any amp I work on is to return it quiet and working really, really well. I have a feeling that this is just beyond my pay grade. I mean, I could make this into a nice sounding, quiet, reliable amp, but it is too far down the path of suck to do all that. So a new pair of 6L6s and a new phase inverter, and it will at least get rid of the microphonics and maybe the reliability issues that might have been blowing that fuse. Now, I haven't looked. I assume these are 6L6s, and I'm wondering if the builder had just stuck some old tubes in there, because based on everything else I see in here, he seems to believe that something old is intrinsically valuable and good just because of its age. Because a 6L6 should not need these dampening O-rings. So he probably had some old microphonic ones and stuck those on there and just sent the amp out into the world. And, it's just a level of build quality or not that I don't subscribe to. So I'm not going to beat myself up making this thing great. I'm just going to make sure that it's not going to blow up again on the owner. So it'll sound like it sounds again. I might have ended that video too soon. There's a buzz that diminishes when I touch the chassis. But the chassis is connected to ground through the power cable. I suspect that many of the grounds in this amp are not tight or good. I can tap on the chassis. And hear it. Now, granted, the output tubes are microphonic. So, in addition to changing those 3 tubes, I'm going to have to go through there and tighten every one of those nuts holding the chassis ground together, and see if I can do anything to improve this without heroics. And just real quick, let's see if shielding does any good. It does have shielding on the bottom of the cap, though it's not the prettiest. Okay. So shielding, particularly over by the inputs, does help a lot. All right, so I may not need to do anything heroic after all, once I change those tubes. I hope not. I don't like working on amps like this. A little addendum, these are not 6L6s, they are KT90s, which tells me that that 3 amp fuse is wildly optimistic. I'm sure this amp should have a 4 amp fuse. And did some looking around, and the ECH81 tube is not carried by very many people anymore, and the ones that are out there are 25 and up. Given how extremely microphonic these output tubes are, I'm going to hold off on this. If this is still audible when you tap on it to an objectionable amount, once I've changed these out, then we'll worry about that. I think those tubes are just throwing everything off with how ring-a-dingy they are.